Put your red shirt on and a brown coat too. Everybody's joining the crew. We got just one drink that we rule them all. Hope would remember your towel. At your Ulu fingers and your Middle Earth guns. A sonic screwdriver or a sword +1. Usually wins steel if it will get you to come. To the big tank. To the big tank. The Rocky Mountain big tank.
Hi, I'm Guy.
Hi, I'm Troy.
And this is Geek Tank.
You're back in the flesh-sized podcast.
So we're here back in our favorite Starbucks doing a show, but we're going to try something new here. We're going to try to pre-record it and then air it later.
Yep.
So we're going to air it on the side of caution.
Or on the side of Monday.
Or the side of Monday. That's definitely it. So we've got this beautiful coffee beans
you see in every Starbucks, probably.
Yes. So that's normally, how you know we're in a Starbucks.
Like 2 years ago, we'd actually be filming over there.
Yeah, but over there is now.
No.
Yeah.
Well, that was more convenient for when we were filming, and we had Chelsea with us because then we could do a triangle setup.
Yeah. And we had Chelsea and Emily. We could do all four of us around.
Yeah, 2 at each corner.
Yeah, 2 at each.
But
so we could lift the table
and spin it
and throw it. Yeah, it's the important part.
If you're in table rage, gamer rage, right? You know, it's a cooperative gamer rage.
Absolutely. We must always cooperate when we're gamer raging.
But we chose this corner for one. It's a nice closed thing, so you don't have to worry about people wandering around behind us and us bothering people. And also with social distancing, we easily have 10 feet, if not more, between us and other folks.
We are definitely socially distant.
And they also removed about 4 tables, 4 or 5 tables out of here.
Wild, actually.
Yeah. But we probably won't be doing this often. It's just things worked out that we would be here. We'll probably still be doing remote recordings from our homes.
Yeah, but just to be fair, the remote recordings were easier.
But I like how it just worked out. We were planning on doing remote recordings because of snow. We're like, let's be ready in case it snows. We can just broadcast from home. And then a couple months later, pandemic hit, but we were prepared.
Yeah, we'd already set up for remote recording in case of snow.
So like, hey, look, a tiny silver lining in this cloud.
I noticed that there was a lot of silver linings, actually. Somebody had said that by not having people do board meetings and things like that, we've cut carbon emissions from many companies by up to 90%. Simply because of the fact that everybody's from home. There's a whole bunch of benefits to being at home. So there's that. It's crazy, weird.
And people are realizing, oh, I don't need to be in person for that meeting.
No, I don't even need to wear pants.
There's still a lot of bosses who feel like you're clearly not doing your job if you're
Unless
not
you're
wearing pants. Now, if your job is to wear pants, then there's
an issue. Yeah, that's an issue.
But if you're working at like an erotic dance club, then you're probably wearing pants is only like 20% of the job because then they're gone after that. So
you don't even need it at that point.
You downsize your clothing, right? For that. Yep. So, in any case, we were talking. One of the reasons we're recording here today on a Sunday as opposed to recording live on Monday, we're already going to be changing our schedule. We're going to be recording live on Mondays earlier than usual and still broadcasting the show at night pre-recorded. But we are doing it a whole day early because Guy wanted to take Monday and Tuesday off.
Right,
entirely.
I'm going to take a break. I'm going to spend all of tomorrow and maybe the next day just reading a book and maybe eating potato chips. That's my battle plan.
Super low responsibility. It's like you just need to make sure your son gets to school and gets back and stays alive.
But he walks now, so
then you just need to make sure he punches in and punches out when he leaves home.
That's it.
No.
But the reason is because I've had a pretty stressful couple of weeks. About 2 weeks ago Wednesday, I flew down to Houston.
And boy, are his arms tired.
Boy, are my arms tired. Flew down to Houston to help my sister finish cleaning out my dad's storage unit. My dad's away in June, and so I ended up doing that kind of going to Texas sort of thing. And cleaning out the storage unit was really stressful. What we had stuff that was my dad's. We had stuff that was my mom's.
Your mom.
And then we had stuff that was my grandparents, all of my grandparents, because of course, when my mom's parents died, my mom put it in a storage unit. When my mom died, boy, you got it.
I know. I'm gonna have to pause on that, obviously.
We put all of her stuff into a U-Haul and took it down and put it in Dad's storage unit. When my dad's mother died, all of her stuff went to that storage unit. We had this massive storage unit that literally it holds RVs. That's what the storage unit's for. And then, of course, my dad had a frame shop. So when that closed in 2005, he put all of the excess frame stuff in there, all of the mats and frames. So it was just this monster Leviathan thing. The worst part about this is Dad had been warning us for years that we were going to be doing this. We should go out there and start working on it. But Dad was afraid to throw anything away that we might want to keep. And we, of course, were not down there. So it ended up being this really rough thing. My sister started in August, sort of going through it and throwing things away and putting things in bins that were, well, guy needs to go to this, And when I went down there, it was, okay, here you go. Here's the 27 bins you need to go through. And there were mouse corpses and bug corpses. It was horrible because, of course, it wasn't a sealed unit. It held RVs. It was a garage in Houston.
Did you have a lot of waste that you had to just throw away because of that?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things, but I mean, there were some real treasures in there that were really cool. My dad had saved my first novel, the one that I wrote in high school. He saved it. He printed it out and saved it, and he printed it on tractor feed paper because that's what we had: dot matrix printers and tractor feed. So he printed that out. I found my Visible Man model, which was a real find because my dad hand painted all of the body parts. So all the little veins and all the little arteries and all these. And I remember him doing that. I remember being about 6 or 7.
This rabbit hole. This gives me a rabbit hole story. Back in high school, had a English creative writing teacher, and she told the story about when she got in really big trouble in high school herself. She was in biology class and they were dissecting a frog, and she chewed bubble gum, and so she took her bubble gum and like rolled it up on a ball, like perfectly smooth, and squished it just enough so it kind of looked like a kidney shape, and put it in next to some other organs in the frog. And then she called her teacher over and she's like, "This isn't in the book. What part is this?" And her teacher got like super excited because the teacher discovered something new, a new organ in this frog that they had never known about or seen. And then she couldn't contain herself over his excitement and started cracking up, and he made her confess and sent her to the principal's office. Right. Had her suspended. And
there you go. That's what happens.
Yeah, but that's her enthusiasm in telling the story and her glee and getting suspended over a practical joke of putting gum inside of a dissected frog. It was,
I respect that.
Yeah, but speaking of body parts and organs and stuff, that's naturally why I rabbit holed into that.
Naturally. My father was also...
he was a model maker. Did you get any additional models out of his collection?
I didn't get any of the models that... I mean, I got the big Jaguar, the big yellow Jaguar that I remember him making in the 70s. He really didn't do that.
The car, not the animal.
It was an XKE E-Type, which is a 63 through 67 Jaguar. But he bought a 1/8 scale, so big. And he was going to make an electric car. That was his thing. So he was going to gut the model and put a small 1/8 scale electric car system in it to see if it would work. But of course, the truth is, in the 70s, battery technology wasn't very good. And it's never been the motor. It's always been the batteries that were the problem. So that he couldn't do. But, my dad was typical of my dad. He was just ahead of his time all the time.
I can't remember if 1/8 is the 6-inch Mego scale or if it's the taller GI Joe scale.
I think it's the taller GI Joe.
So you could get a Spock and put him in the driver's seat.
I could, except that my dad shrink wrapped it.
Oh,
as is typical of my dad, and now I don't want to pull it out of the shrink wrap because that's the story too.
It'll instantly just crumple to dust.
Oh no, it's fine. But I mean, like, but that's part of the story. My dad shrink wrapped it.
Or you got like 1968 Air,
right,
trapped in there, so
right? Exactly.
That's probably the freshest Air
you
want to have wear.
Although I don't know, I was made here in Colorado in 1968, so
at least it wasn't China.
That's true. But Denver wasn't really
that great.
It wasn't awesome in the 70s. It was actually a 70s model, so he made it in the 70s. I was born in the 60s, so. But I remember him making it. So I did get that. I also he had a couple of car model kits that were not built, so I'm going to build them, and in his honor, right? Build them and then shrink wrap them in his honor. He was a pack rat, and he kept everything.
But as you pointed out, he was an organized pack rat.
Very organized.
Which, if you're going to be a pack rat, that's the way to do it.
And so, like, I found his pay stubs from his first job. He was paid like $1 an hour or $2 an hour because it was the 50s. And he was high ranking. So, that was pretty good money. I found pay stubs for when he worked with Marriott Hotels in the 70s. That was the reason we're here. It was because he was working for the Houston Marriott. And then they said, we're building this Marriott in Denver at Hamden and I-25. And so we're going to send you up there to be the general housekeeping manager. And so he was like, cool. So he picked up 2-year-old me and my mom.
That's quite a feat.
Yeah. Well, and he was,
I paused the your moms because we were getting on the road.
Oh, gotcha.
So you're on a hiatus.
Brought us here. So I've lived here since I was 2. So I don't remember living in Houston ever. So as far as I consider myself a Coloradan because since 2, it's really. But he moved here and when I went through his stuff, I found blueprints for that Marriott. I found blueprints for the rooms. Because he was a draftsman. And so he did some of those blueprints and kept them. And so I found those and I've kept those. I found buttons we've opened the new Amsterdam Marriott and we've opened the Denver Marriott. Every time they opened a new Marriott, the employees wore buttons. And he kept all of those buttons and they're in great shape. So I'm sure somebody wants those. He kept all of his name tags and I posted that to Facebook a couple of days ago because I was like, I can't even believe this, but I've got every position he held. And then I found all of his pay stubs. So I'm like, well, we know exactly how much he got paid. I found all of his Army pay stubs when he was in the Army. I mean, it was like really, it's interesting. But I think the thing that weighed the most on me it was a sum of his life.
Right.
And he kept all of these things that are just elements.
It was the material sum.
Right. It was a material sum of his life. And that was really hard on both my sister and me because we were going through the last of his world. Mm-hmm. And now it's my job to capture all of that, record it, and stuff like that. So,
It's stressful for anyone who's had a family member pass. You've been through this, you know what Guy's talking about.
Yeah.
My mom, your mom, passed away at the beginning of October of 2021, and she's survived by her husband, Gene, fantastic guy, and it's so I didn't have to go through every piece of possession she had by myself. My responsibility and my wife Tara was fantastic help with this, was really just getting the really important records and financial stuff kind of in order to help Gene because he's not really a records minded kind of person.
Right.
And because there's so much red tape with when someone passes, getting everything in order for their finances and bills and everything. That was the harder part for me, was to try to make sure all of that stuff was lined up to make it easier for him. But
there will come a time.
There'll come a time where I will have to go through that. On the plus side, the way that you had your sister there to help, I'll have my niece and her family, because they live very close to their home. They're back in Kentucky, so they'll be able to help me there. As is my sister lives down there as well.
Right. So
And
you've got some.
I have a lot of family to help. As much as I love my mom, as far as possessions go, we weren't really connected on the same level in that. So I don't have a lot of possessions that I associate with her. Whereas with my brother, I have tons of memories connected to possessions, because he raised me in understanding fandom. So we shared a lot of the same fandom. So then it comes down to his miniatures that he painted, his models that he did, his comics he collected, his books that he read. There's just so many possessions are like, well, this is Todd, this is Todd, this is Todd. The material side of his life. Whereas
I feel like also Todd passed much the same way my mom did, suddenly and unexpectedly,
Right.
and way too young.
Yeah, he went at 50.
Right. And your mom and my dad are a little bit, at least we kind of had warning with both of them.
Yeah, we knew that they were both in bad health.
Yeah.
They both lived pretty rough lives with smoking and having COPD and such. There was, I think with my mom and also with her dad, we saw it coming. There was this hope that they would get around it. But the closer it got, the more I think we realized this isn't going to go the way that we want it to go.
Yeah.
So that was rough. And so having that lead up and that prep time, I think definitely changes things as opposed to the other thing. With my brother, I think a lot of my hope though was built out of denial. The denial that this is going to go bad and it isn't likely it's going to turn around. I didn't want to accept that. So it was a lot more of we're going to get through this. It's going to be really hard, but we will succeed.
Right.
Type thing.
Whereas my mom had a widowmaker heart attack
Out of the blue.
out of the blue, completely out of the blue. So, I mean, the difference, of course, we have here is we do definitely have similarities, but they aren't perfect.
Right. Now, how was your mom with her possessions?
So, my mom was a pack rat as well, but she was not organized. So, what I ended up with from mom were stacks of papers that you'd end up with a photograph of us or a photograph of me from third grade mixed in with 16 check stubs from Domino's, mixed in with a bunch of notes that she wrote because she saw something on TV that she just
It's like the polar opposite of an organization compared to your father.
Right, exactly. And I found that with my dad's mom was there too, because my grandmother, that was the same thing. He had buckets of stuff that was clearly, they just took her desk and just dumped it into a bin, because I went through it and I'm like, I've got, check reorder forms here. I don't even know, we don't need check reorder forms. Because actually, keeping a cancel check, it at least gives you a moment in history. But a reorder form is nothing, or an empty box, or, it's like, I don't even know what, none of these mean anything.
Right.
But then, all of that, my grandmother, my dad's mother, was a pioneer. She was in the 50s. She had started her own business in the South. So on top of all of that, I found things from the 50s and 60s, business licenses, various aspects of the fabric shop, which was an amazing. The Conroe Chamber of Commerce made some kind of proclamation about her shop in the 60s, and I found that proclamation. I was like, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And of course, when she closed the shop, it was a big deal for the city, because it had been running as a sort of a tentpole of that city for a very long time. Dad's frame shop, not so much, but that's all right. There are many people who remember him with his frame shop. And so it was just a lot of things like that. It was just so dependent on where you were. If I was in Dad's stuff, we were good. As soon as I moved into Nana's stuff, things got chaotic. As soon as I moved into Mom's stuff, things got chaotic. Then I'd move back into Dad's stuff, and everything was organized again. Yeah. I found my mom and Dad's divorce papers, like all of the divorce papers, including letters going back and forth between the lawyers. Like, I have explicit detail of their divorce now, and that's kind of, I wouldn't have liked that as a kid,
Right.
but as an adult, it's fascinating. It's a little interesting to see all of that.
Yeah, my brother was more like your mom in that he was a pack rat, but he had very bad organizational skills. So, and going, I still have stuff I have yet to fully go through, and it's 8 years later. He went for almost a year still in the hospital with this situation. And so there was no sense in paying rent on his apartment when no one's living there. So I had to move what I could out of his apartment into a storage unit, which automatically I had to downsize stuff because you could fit a person's home into a storage unit. He ran murder mysteries, so he just had tons of props and costumes for the, well, I don't know what costume I'm going to need for what murder mystery, so any costume I can find that, especially for free or cheap, is going into the collection of costumes. And so he had a 2-layer house. He had a basement that was pretty large and then first floor. So about 70% of the stuff I had to get rid of off the bat. And luckily he had a really good friend base, so things could get pushed to them. Some friends were willing to donate storage space that they had to put stuff in because we didn't know what was going to happen. But we wanted the best. We figured he'd get out, he'd have to get another home, and then we'd move all of the stuff back into his new home. And I got a storage unit, so I was able to go through some stuff and determine, oh, there's no reason he doesn't. Why does he have a receipt from 5 years ago for a gallon of milk and some bread? Clearly, this is one of those things that he meant to throw away, never threw away, ended up in a pile of stuff. Got through a bunch of that. There were a few things that, like the mouse damage, where it's like, well, there's, as much as I want to keep this, can't keep it. It's got mouse damage on it. One of those was there's a game that he and I used to play called Clue Museum Caper, which was a really interesting secret hidden move game where one person's a thief in the museum trying to steal paintings, and they're doing all of their moves secretly, while the other players are playing the security guards trying to find the thief that's stealing the paintings. But they had eaten that game, so it's like, well, it's got to go. That's a bummer. But most of the stuff had already been gone through, said weeded down, and then when you passed, obviously I didn't want to keep everything, and I don't have room for everything. So I loaded up what I could on one trip back, and then a few months later I made another trip back and collected more stuff and brought it back. And I've been going through it and trying to figure out, well, setting stuff aside for his son, setting stuff aside for his daughter. I just last 5 months ago, I gave her another box of stuff. I'm like, hey, here's another box of stuff. So he kept but he kept some stuff that you just like, why would you keep that? He had transcripted some phone conversations that kind of showed the darker side and more malicious side of some people that I don't think they realized that the conversation was being kept. And, going through those, I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, because there are definitely people in that person's life that I think would like to know what a jerk they were, but I also
don't know if I want to give it to them.
I don't know if I want to. I don't know if that was my brother's intention at one point. Was like, what was he doing with this? And there's evidence of things that I like. I'm sure he wants me to destroy this evidence. It was definitely an adventure, and I'm still. And for me, and this is going to probably happen with your dad, is that because you have boxes still of stuff that you haven't exactly sorted. When you go through that, those emotions just hit out of nowhere. And it stifles the process, of course, because then you're like, well, I thought I was going to get through this today. I got one box done. I'm done.
Yep. I'm out.
Take another break.
Oh, that's part of what we're talking about with the breaks.
So, and it's interesting concepts like this self-care term, which is new to me as of like 5-6 years ago, hearing the term self-care. And what's interesting is growing up, and I'm sure you went through this because you're from the South and you're from the same time period, there's a level of guilt that just sort of floats in the back of the mind when you do something selfish, of taking any time for yourself and saying no to someone asking you to do a thing, right? And there's this built-in guilt a part of it. And it's like, no, they asked you to do this. Sure, you had other plans, but you need to give up on your plans to have fun, to go do this thing because someone asked you to do a thing. And it's something that I definitely don't want my kids to fall into the habit of, is to know your limits and value your time more than money, because I'm in that thing of I devalue my time. Yeah. And I know you do the same. So you really need to say, and this comes into a problem to being frugal buying stuff. Is it worth me driving to 5 different stores and spending 3 hours to save $3, finding the cheaper price on something?
I said something about that Friday because I took the U-Haul back, and I was talking to my sister, and she was like, "Okay, because of the vagaries of things, we ordered 4 bags of shipping blankets to cover everything in there, and they only had 3." And so we were like, "Okay, but we got to make sure the Colorado U-Haul place knows, because otherwise they're going to charge us for stealing a bag of blankets, so they have to make sure of that." And so we went there, and they didn't charge her for the blankets, but they didn't refund it. Oh, and so we were. I was driving back with a friend, our friend Anna. She went and fetched me and everything, because of course once you drive the U-Haul there, you have nothing to drive around. Right. So she went and fetched me, and I was talking to my sister on the phone, and I was like, "Okay, here's the deal. I don't want to make Anna have to sit around for all of this stuff, so I'll go home, get my car, and drive back." Well, we just about get to my house, and Gia calls up and says, "It's going to be $2 whole." Right. And I'm like, "Do you want me to go back?" And she's like, "What?" I mean, she was like incredulous. She's like, "Why would you go back for $2?
Of course, she's got all of her ducks in a row.
Right.
Unlike us, who have a duck, a rabbit, and a lion.
Right. And like, I'm sitting there going, "I'll go back and fix that $2 problem if you want."
It's like,
yes. And then she, no, don't.
It's $2 in gas.
Really worth it. Yeah, I was like, it costs us more to turn on my car than it would to go there. And that was actually something, as I hung up, I caught myself, and I was like, you know what, that's the thing. And I was talking to Anna about this, who also has a problem with God. I said, here's the thing. We need to remember that we are worth at least $15 an hour. If the thing takes 1 hour and makes us less than $15, it's not worth our time.
Yep.
And we need to remember that. We need to remember that, because I will run all day long to do a $5 thing. And then you're like, so I spent 10 or 15 hours to get $5. Right. And you're like, was that really worth my time? No, it really wasn't.
It's so weird that our brains are programmed that way, growing up being poor and being frugal.
Right.
We get this thing, and part of capitalism, of like, well, we need the absolute best value possible. And then sideline a blind spot of which you're making your time $0.
Right.
So
we're in the case of this one, negative.
Yep.
Cost us more. And so that's part of the whole problem that we need to,
But then that plays in the self-care. Then if you're like you want to take 2 days off. And 1980s,
and I feel a little guilty about this,
because 1980s guy would be saying, well, you're wasting that time because your time's worth nothing.
Right.
Why are you using that time to do something worth something? And to get that whole mind's like, no. I'm paying myself $15 an hour for 10 hours of the day to have fun.
Right. And I'm actually just thinking I'm going to literally just sit in a chair and read a book. That's what I've got to finish that Expanse book. I'm reading the 9th Expanse book. It's the last book.
Because people want to talk about it.
Yeah, people are already starting to talk about the ending of the book on the web. I need to finish this book. And really, honestly, this was a super stressful trip. We didn't even mention the fact that I drove back during one of the worst windstorms in history here on this state. We had 100-mile-an-hour gusts, and I'm in a mostly empty U-Haul because we had loaded up all of Dad's books and then left all the books at my sister's house. So the 50 or 60 boxes of books are now at my sister's house. Well, that left half the U-Haul empty. So I'm effectively driving a big bubble.
You just needed to put a sail on top of it.
I know, I would have been fine. Turn it sideways.
Yeah, just boom.
Yeah, but at some point in time, I took video, and it was like we were going 10, 15 miles an hour, and vehicles in front of us vanish.
And you could check out that video right now. We don't have the technology to do that, so.
But that was,
You can friend a guy.
right. Well, I mean, Brent will already be watching the video. Yeah, hi, Brent. Just saying hi. So Brent, the reason why there's no show today or tomorrow is because I'm taking a break. I'll be back Wednesday. So, like, back to work, back to everything, because I don't mind. My job doesn't actually take up, like, it doesn't hurt to do my work.
Right.
What hurts is having to schedule properly and make sure that I've done all the pieces parts and, be on camera on the right time. That doesn't really hurt a lot.
But it's still, it's a chunk of time,
yeah.
and you're missing that free time stuff. This is one of the reasons we're going to Monday days for recording.
Right.
Because
We don't have free
Monday
time.
nights for both of us is time that we normally would be able to spend doing stupid stuff like watching TV shows with our significant others.
Yes.
And so we were having to set that time aside to do the show. And schedule-wise, it's like it's better to do it during the day because our wives are at work, our kids are at school, and we're sitting around twiddling our thumbs.
Right. Exactly.
We can do a show.
We can do a show. So that's sort of where we're going on this one. Is I'm just going to take Monday, Tuesday, and I'm not going to have any demands. And then that way I can kind of heal a little bit and recoup and get back onto my feet.
Now, a big part of that too, and this is I made like very minimal notes, is people learning to say no.
Yes.
Because no means no. And so when you get that phone call saying, hey, can you come over and do gardening for me? No, I can't.
Right.
So I remember back before phones were like, before cell phones, I would not answer my phone on my day off, right? Because I never knew if it was the boss calling to ask me to come in. And they can't fire me for not answering my phone because it was not part of my contract that I had to answer my phone on my days off.
Right. Right. Well, and that's the thing. I'm going to try to stay away from Facebook unless I happen to do artwork. But I'm not.
You need to learn to say no to yourself.
Yeah, that's part
you
of
get
it.
into stupid
I get
arguments.
into arguments on Facebook that I shouldn't get into. It's highly stressful, and things like that. And I need to stop.
My rule, and this is a hard rule to adapt though, is I first, before responding to anybody, unless if it's something like, how do you do wet washes on miniatures? Like, I'll answer that question for someone because they're seeking technical help, which is fine. But if someone's saying something stupid, or that I see like, oh, clearly they're missing a piece of information politically or philosophically or something, first question I ask is, do I know this person personally? If the answer is no, I don't say anything. That's the hard part.
And I actually got down to that point. I only really now argue with a couple of people. And the rest of them I just listen to, but even the listening to is stressful now. And so I try.
Because we want to think the best of people. And so when you see something where you're like, oh, this person's probably just not getting the right information, we don't want to assume that they've already made up their mind and they're closed-minded to any kind of other information coming in.
Right. Well, and that is part of the issue. And there's another one of those things. I actually think, I was thinking about this while I was on my trip. I was thinking I'm going to make a pledge. I've already sort of followed this pledge, which is, it's the dinner table rule. You know, on social media, I'm not going to talk about politics or religion. It's that, you know, your dad told you not to do that at the dinner table rule. And I mean, really, honestly, you know that meme of the guy who shoots the other guy and then turns to the camera and says, why would X do this?
Yes.
I always feel like in real life, for us, it's us. And then we shoot like our culture and then turn to the camera and go, why would Facebook do this? And I'm like, we're the ones that keep putting out divisive memes. We're the ones that keep copying things that say the other side is evil and terrible. We're the ones doing it. Now, is Facebook probably sorting stuff? Yeah, probably. They're probably making it worse.
But really, they're just the platform.
But if we all decided to follow the dinner table rule and only discuss things at social media like we would only discuss things at the dinner table, and make that an agreement and all decide to do it, we can clean up social media. Because they can't sort anything if there's nothing there to sort. You know, I mean, if it becomes just all kitten pictures and what you had for dinner last night, or in my case, spaceships, because it's always going to be spaceships, then, well, I don't know, I have a kitten too, so there's that.
Kitten on a spaceship.
Kitten on the spaceship. If it's
Which is, by the way, the name of my new adult book that I'm writing.
I'm sure. I was going to say it should be your rock group, but I guess, yeah, adult book is probably better.
Adult entertainment book.
Yes. So, but if that's what we do, then we clean up. So I'm actually going to make that. I think I'm going to make that deal. But I also think that it's probably time for me to snooze some of my more politically charged friends, both on either side. And I was saying to my sister, I was like, my sister, by the way, is politically on the other side of the spectrum, but not dramatically so. So I get to hear sort of the chatter a little, but not. She's not dramatic. She's not way out there. She's actually reasonable. But it was like I was saying, I think I should probably warn my friends that I'm going to snooze you if you're political. Yeah. And she's like, that's not gonna go over well because the friends that are political are gonna say you're censoring them. And I'm like, maybe that's not a bad deal.
Yeah. Well, you're not censoring them. You're just not listening to them directly.
Right.
Censoring would be you snooze them to everyone. Right. They still get to say what they want to say. You're just saying, I'm leaving the room. It's your sister sounds like she's a lot more like my in-laws, which surprisingly enough, I'm way closer politically to my in-laws than I am to my mom. But it's they're old school Republicans. Yeah. As opposed to, and for them, the new Republicans are way too far to one side.
Yeah.
And and it's one of those things. It's like it's interesting to me that it helps keeps me in my politics in perspective because I'll fall for the propaganda. It's like, oh wow, I'm way too democratic. I'm way too liberal. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm in the right middle of the line.
Right.
It's the other people are way too far to the one side.
Right.
We need to try to bring everyone back closer to the middle. But so it's a lot of times my mother-in-law and I would have to hang up on my mom to bring her closer back to the middle, which was interesting. And it's and with our friend the engineer, he's in that mindset of thinking as an us and them type thing,
and he's trying to work his way out of it.
He is,
but it's really hard for him.
Once you get brainwashed, it's hard to pull out of it. And it's if people could stop using labels for convenience, because that's kind of what it is. It's like, well, if you're labeled this, then you're my side, and if you're labeled that, you're the other side. And there's no discussion because we've already chose our sides, and we're only going to play on our team. Right? Instead of trying to think of it as a collective, trying to go for one goal, it becomes this side of the boat versus that side of the boat, and that side of the boat clearly is not trying to keep the boat afloat. They're trying to sink it. A boat. What's this all about? That's for our Canadian viewers, which I know you have at least one friend in Canada. And I'm very sorry about that joke. So there you go. In any case, but yeah, politically, that's one of those things that I think that's a good thing. And with New Year's Eve coming up, we can make it a New Year's Eve resolution.
There's a lot of things I'm going to be changing in 2022.
I wonder how many of my friends have to snooze me. Yeah. I'm not offended, and I'm glad that they do because I'd much rather our friendship stay intact than any kind of politics or any of that getting in the way.
Well, and I've always wanted Facebook to just add the option to censor posts that have
specific
certain words,
and
that I choose. Like I could choose. A good one would be, they've obviously got the ability to do to look at pictures. I could snooze bugs. Yeah, somebody just the other day posted, isn't this centipede beautiful? And I was like, well, I'm going to have nightmares about that for a couple of weeks. Thanks.
Oh, I have a couple of friends that have arachnophobia.
Yeah. And that'd be nice if I could choose. You know what I mean? Like, because then I could just snooze the things that have bugs in it. Yeah. Because, honestly, I don't want to see bugs. And I have a couple of, and I'm like, I have friends who are scientists, and they dip into entomology. And that's fine.
Well, why didn't you respond to my picture that I posted of Bugs Bunny?
That'd be kind of sad, but I could do insects probably.
Yeah.
I had another friend who's in Australia, and she had a huntsman spider in her office, and it was sitting up on the ceiling. And she's like, "Well, this is our new co-worker for the day." I'm not arachnophobic, but I know a couple of people who are. And all they've got now is suddenly this huge picture of this massive spider on the wall. And I'm like, I feel bad for all the arachnophobic folks.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
because they just got
Yeah, I had a friend that I didn't realize, you know, back before the last election, there was a span of 4 years that I would point out things that I found negative about a certain person whose name I won't mention. I didn't realize it was bothering one friend of mine because he never said anything. Had I known, I would have specifically made it so that those posts were excluding him so he wouldn't have to see them. And so
Well, you're very conscientious too. I sort by that kind of
I try to. It's
and that's another thing. I might, starting January 1, ask to be excluded from your political posts. Then I don't have to snooze you.
I've cut out a lot of them. Yeah, I mean that's definitely been a lot easier now.
Yeah, it'd be a lot easier. But I mean, I still want to see all the posts of your family. I still want to see all the posts of you doing minis.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the problem with snoozing. Is I'm gonna lose
it's all
them.
it's all or nothing.
Yeah, I'm gonna lose them. Luckily, the one friend is very politically charged, but his wife isn't. And so, though I think they agree, I can snooze him and still get the family information from her.
I've actually got
friends with both of them.
I've actually got 2 tiers. I've got I've got 3 tiers. I've got 3 tiers. I've got people who
3 tiers
come out of our eyes.
come out of our eyes.
I've got the one that if you're on my friends list, then you see the post, and I call that my sandwich group. And then I've got my inner circle, and then those are the ones who get everything that's rated R or more. Or
I'm good at staying there. That
Yeah.
doesn't bother me.
It's like I rarely post things that hit rated R. Usually they're PG-13, but I don't hold back. It's like everything from PG on up, I'll throw it on my inner circle.
And PG stands for political gunk.
Gummies.
Political gummies.
And then the sandwich one is like, oh look, here's a picture of my family throwing a ball around the park or whatever. And the other one would be like, look at this cake that I found on the internet that was part of a baby shower, and I can't believe they do that.
Right.
Which our one friend, one of the porters, I had to put into the other group because it turns out they look at their Facebook at work.
Ooh.
And so I'm like, I'm sorry, I did not put a warning with that because I didn't think about people looking at stuff at work. So that's one of those, that group. But then my third tier is everyone in the entire world. Every now and then I'll do a public post, which means even if you don't have me friended, you could find it. So if some person who doesn't know me, like anything for Geek Tank, I make it public. Anything that's trying to promote a Friends thing, I make it public because I want everyone to be able to see it. I don't do a lot of those posts, but I ended up moving some of my political friends to the outer circle because that way I don't have to worry about in between. And
well, I don't want to be snoozed. I mean, you know, if I was politically on the political opposite side, knowing that, you know,
well, neither of us want to be trapped in a vacuum because we recognize the danger that's
a very
what
dangerous thing.
That's what a lot of people are falling for. They're only getting the vacuum side.
That one sucks if you get in the vacuum.
It does. I was trying to think of a Hoover joke, but it's just damned up.
Right.
It would be Hoover. It would. It's guns. Gun control is a great aspect of that, of vacuums. Because some friends think I'm completely against gun.
I've had that problem too.
Other friends think that I'm like some Punisher nutcase who owns like thousands of guns, in which case I don't own any. I own airsoft guns. And it's one of these, it's like, no, what you need to understand is I totally have a belief that there's a good use for guns and that there's a level of responsibility. People should own them. What I disagree on is that guns are in any way going to be effective at stopping the governments. That's a pipe dream that people have. And that I don't think everyone should get a gun. I think it's like, guns are very easy to use to kill people. So why just let anyone have one? We got to make sure they know how to use it. They're not going to be stupid about it. The truth is, there's far more accidental death with guns than there are actual crimes committed that lead to fatality with a gun.
Right. And accidental death in your own family, your own.
Right. Either someone comes home that you weren't expecting and you shoot them because you didn't identify the target correctly. or you don't understand proper trigger discipline, so you accidentally shoot yourself or someone else, or you leave it laying out and your kid finds it and accidentally shoots himself or her. It says guns and swimming pools. Swimming pools are the two biggest leading accidental deaths of kids.
And there's nothing worse than a mass swimming pool killing.
Yes. Or an accidental drowning inside of a gun.
Yes.
But or having a pool shoot.
Every time I have my miniature people, you know, with a shrink ray that I use, then I just have to be very careful. They won't drown.
Right.
You just have to be extremely very careful.
I feel like if you're
miniature people.
I feel like if you're going to purchase a weapon, you should have to go through a class to understand how to keep it secure and safe and prove you're not an idiot. But the right to bear arms doesn't say anything about being an idiot. So idiots are allowed to bear arms.
It's the same militia.
It does, but people like to ignore that part.
Yeah.
Now here's my thing. Nowhere does it explain what an arm is.
No.
So
it could be this.
Where's my weaponized smallpox?
Right.
Is that covered by the Constitution? Because that would threaten the government. Now, as being in media, I really think that the stronger thing than a gun for protection from the government is cameras.
Yes.
I think we need to alter it to say you have the right to have access to a media device to spread media, because
that probably should be controlled.
Yep, shooting, quote unquote, a scene of someone with authority abusing that authority is far more powerful to get it out to the world, as we've seen in the past few years.
The truth, I keep thinking about it because, of course, you use the word shoot with cameras,
right? And
I keep thinking that I'm on like 20 lists just because I'm a photographer,
right?
Because I've got bodies in the trunk. I'm always shooting people, shooting houses. You know,
you couldn't hit a house with them,
right? Like, I mean, yesterday I shot your entire family.
I know, multiple times.
And I'm sure that this just becomes something I'm on some list. And they have to, on these lists, go, he's a photographer, and like mark it off, stop tracking him because he's a photographer. Because I mean, it's just so weird that and my sister and I came up with another word, another common phrase photographers use. It could be completely misconstrued, and I can't remember what it is, but it's still funny. You know, because it's like
framing.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Anyway,
I knew a camera person who told me a story about when this was like in the this has been 93. Was telling me about how he was setting up to film the president at the time doing a speech, and he was up on one of the balconies, and he turned to, who at the time he didn't know who it was, but the Secret Service person. He's like, "Is this a good place to shoot the president from?" And of course, being intelligent like most Secret Service people are, they knew what he meant.
And probably started laughing.
Well, they actually just give him the deadpan stare, you know, letting it sink into the cameraman to realize what he had actually said, so you can change it.
It's sadly that's the phrase we use.
Yeah.
So I can't help it. That's what we're supposed to use. That's the terminology. So back to taking a break. By the way,
we're at 49, so we're good.
Right. Brent, knowing that you are probably wondering where I am today and tomorrow, be aware that I'll be back Wednesday, but I'm not actually watching this video. He will be watching, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
You can talk to him, but I'm not there.
I will try to log on and respond. I just check my calendar. I don't know if I have anything planned for tomorrow night or not, but I'm definitely not in the hiatus that you're going to be in.
Yeah, I'm going to take a 2-day break. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to try to get off of.
Of course, remember this is going out at 8 p.m., so people will have missed your 9-10 a.m.
Oh, I thought you were going to do both, but that's all right. You don't have to. You don't have to. It's okay. It's all fine.
We'll just post a note. So I don't think this will fit in with another broadcast. So although it'll take us a little over time, I do want to talk about material collections as representations of a life,
right?
Because there's clearly a problem with that rooted in capitalism.
Maybe, because I can see a lot of what you're talking about. All the things of value to me, ironically, were his pay stubs. You know, you get to see like what he was making when he was working at Safeway. Not Safeway. This is before Safeway existed. So it was Safeway in 1950. I guess it was 58, 59. was when he was working at Safeway, maybe 57. So, you know, and that was the big grocery store in Conroe, and he worked there.
Plus, because you can tie a story to the stuff,
and that means something to me. You know, the story always means more to me than the thing.
Yeah, whereas with like my brother being a creative, anything that he put his creativity into, like a painted miniature, that means he took his time to sit there and paint it, and he made the color choices about what was going to be what on it.
We had a problem with Dad's paintings because he framed it. He didn't paint it, but he framed a bunch of things. And so we had 50, 60 pieces of framed artwork. And the frames were art. The mats were cut pretty. The frames were art. And so that was a problem. So,
and I'm assuming you still have some.
Yep.
What you need to do is get the frames off and put them on one of your art pieces.
That's actually so. That's exactly what I did. One of Dad's was would you like your picture to look like this sort of thing, where he framed and matted just like a printout of a building, and then at the bottom, how would you like to see your picture here? And I'm going to take the back off it, pull pieces of art out, put my art in, and then he framed my art. And that's exactly what I was going to do. Nice. Because my sister was like, "Why do you want that one?" And I'm like, "Well, let me tell you." So I'll do that, and then I can hang that up. That'll be fun. Cool. And so that'll be cool. That we'll end up on that, but I think we should talk about material collections at some point. Sure, as a whole show, because you're right, but there's a lot more to it. Because I think
I definitely wanted to touch in on it since we were talking about that and the aspect of it being when you pass away. For some people, it's to be conscious for what's going to be important to other people, so you can make sure that you can lead to that. One of the biggest problems with both I encountered with both my mom and my brother were neither really prepared for what comes after. So there was no real clear instructions on who gets what to do with what's important and what's not important, and what's important to you to have done.
Right.
And so
I was
going to end on the advice of saying that, but I've got
on the same note. That was one of the things that got Dad all tangled up. He was trying to figure out what was important and what wasn't. And what it really boiled down to was he's like, "I'm going to throw all this away." And I'd be like, "Oh, no, that's the story." Mm-hmm. He's like, "Okay, so I can't throw that away." Gotcha. So what about this? And I'm like, "Oh, you can throw that away." And he's like, "Okay." And then what about this? And then it was well, are we just going to spend the next 4 years with what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? Because he didn't know what was valuable to him. And so he ended up locking up and then not throwing anything away because he was afraid he'd throw something of value away because he didn't know what. So on the flip side, even when you plan, it doesn't work.
Well, I think in that case,
and that's not to say you shouldn't try.
Yeah.
I feel like my dad did the best that he could, and certainly a whole lot better than what we ended up with my mom. Because my mom was a disaster, and we tried to clear up that area. Because, of course, at 56 years old, no one expects to die. So she didn't know she was going to die.
Which is one of those things that most of our viewers are 60 or younger.
Yeah.
And I'd say most of them between 30 and 50. So it's you really need to have kind of a conscious idea of realizing, well, death can happen at any time. Does someone know your wishes for what you want done? Right. Because for my mom, it was super important that she was buried because it's part of her religion. Right. For me, it's super important that a lot of money's not spent. And if you can get away with it, toss me in the ocean.
Right.
Whatever's free, you do that. But as I don't want money spent on it, because once I'm gone, I believe this is nothing. Anything salvageable, because I'm frugal, pass on what's salvageable.
Right.
If you can get some money out of it, sell it on the black market.
I have a kidney. Sorry, I have a kidney. But I mean, and for me, it's important not what happens to my body, but that there's a marker somewhere. Mm-hmm. Because we've done so much genealogy where the tombstone has helped us figure something out. So it's important that there's a marker. It's important that says my name, my full name, my birth date, my death date, stuff like that. something, and then that's important.
Yeah, you want a site that
Right.
tribute can be paid to, or
Yeah.
visitation.
So the genealogist can find my marker and stuff. So it doesn't have to be me on there. I don't care.
But see, you already know, and now there's actually a record of it too.
There's a record of it. You guys know.
But that's something to think about, just to make sure it's because really the stress left on the living can be enormous if there's a lack of information. for
Right.
things. And then you can also end up, hopefully you haven't had any disputes over possessions, but
Although there has been some dispute, but not much.
But
Over mom's stuff, there was no disputes. Nobody cared. It was my sister and I just sort of sorted stuff out. But we are having some problems with Dad, with people who were his kids, but not his kids, just people he adopted because they didn't have a good home or whatever. And they're kind of like, well, we want this, we want that. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But then it's like, we want the really expensive stuff. And I'm like, now wait a minute.
But this is
I know
why
what you're after here.
This is why it's important to to talk to someone that you trust and say, would you be the executor? Meaning you make all the hard choices. And are you cool with that? And then find out that. So that way you have the one person who can come in and make the decisions of really doing the detective work of like, is this person after this for just the monetary value and they're going to turn around and sell it? Or are they after it because there is a true connection, and being able to gauge, would the person who passed away want this person to have it or this person to have it?
Right.
But it's
We're over by 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know. But this is one of the things that I could say that I'm disappointed that for me, it feels like I'm not given the tools I need to properly respect the wishes of the person who passed away because they didn't leave that information there for me. And I don't want
what
to.
we should do.
And I don't want to
talk about the mistakes that were made, because we've had a number of different people pass.
And there's been consistent mistakes with all of them.
Right. And maybe it's not a bad idea to do Geek Tank talks about what we should do when we die.
I really like to get Chelsea and I'd like to have her for all of them, but I really like to get her into that because she, if I remember correctly,
She's
gonna
lost a
have
few
someone
people.
pass.
Yeah.
And then there's coming up a tough situation, I think, with someone who's potentially going to pass. So, but yeah, I think that'd be a happy-go-lucky topic.
That'd be a great topic.
Yeah. In any case, thank you for joining us for our
pre-recorded,
shrink-wrapped
Jaguar XKE type show. And I'll see everybody who joins my show, I'll see you on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Mountain Time until 11 a.m. Mountain Time. And for everybody else, we'll see you guys next week, Monday.
in the morning.
Monday morning starting at 10 Mountain Time to 11 Mountain Time.
Is next Monday Christmas?
Nope. Next Saturday is Christmas.
Next Saturday is Christmas.
So it'll be our first post-Christmas episode of the year.
But
Definitely something we should.
But still 2021. Right?
Well, yeah, but it's the first post-Christmas episode.
Or you can
Of
also
the
look
year.
at it as our last episode.
It's our last episode
ever
2021.
2021. Ever of 2021.
Ever. Until then, I've been Guy,
I've been Troy.
and this is Geek Tank.